I am standing in front of an empty hangar. This was the home of November 665 Foxtrot Lima. As we know, our story has a happy ending, and we know our pilots, Truman and Craig, survived, but the airplane didn't get to come home. And so in today's episode, what we're going to learn about is we're going to pick up the story right from when that airplane came to rest right above the forest floor, and hear from Craig and Truman what they did immediately afterwards to start to implement their survival, and our collective goal in this, and the reason they wanted to share their story, the reason we put this together, is because if even one person is able to execute a better forced landing and have a better outcome because of something they learned in this video, all of our collective jobs are done. Hello, and welcome to Aviation No Tie Downs. This is where we bring you interesting stories of our shared passions for the people, the business, and the adventure of aviation.
We finally came to a stop, actually. I remember seeing the ground come up. I'm sure I had my eyes closed for some of it because we were getting knocked around but I did see the ground coming up, and we kind of went thunk on our nose like that, and then we just slowly flopped over on our back.
Yes.
So I see the ground coming up as we go boom on our back, and we're hanging in our straps. And the first thing I said was, "You okay?" He goes, "Yeah." "You okay?" I went, "Yeah." Like amazing.
Amazing, yes. Tell us what happened then, kind of from that point. Now you're safely on the ground, nobody's badly hurt, hardly even hurt at all, and so now what happens?
We're hanging there upside down, and I asked Truman. I said, "Can you reach my seatbelt?" And he goes, "I can't even reach my own seatbelt." and I go, "Okay, all right." So I was able to get to my seatbelt and drop down onto the ceiling, which is now the floor, and get out of the plane. And right outside the plane, the wing is the fuel was coming out of there pretty seriously at that
Away
point.
from the cockpit.
But Truman's having a little trouble getting out of the cockpit. So he gets a little hung up, but he finally gets his seatbelt off, and then he kind of gets his foot hung up on the edge of the top now edge of the door, which is the floor. And finally he gets his foot loose, and he still can't get out of the cabin, and he goes, I'm still hung up, and I go,
my back is hung
"You're
up."
not hung up. I'm holding you up by your suspenders so you don't fall down." And what did you say?
I
He
said, "Well, let me go. I want to
go."
get out of this thing. I got to get out, right?"
And I did let you go.
And when he did, I went right on my face.
It's just
and
Keystone Cop routine.
it was absolutely, and I was not able to get my hands up quick enough, and I literally buried my face this deep. It was very soft dirt,
Right.
but buried my face like this. I'm lying there for a minute, going, "Well, that wasn't exactly right." I pushed myself up, brushed the dirt off, and I said, "That's not exactly what I meant." And of course, we both started laughing.
That's right.
And about 30 seconds later, I think Craig had the video camera on you, right?
You did, yeah. Well, I had a handheld radio on the airplane.
Yes.
And I took that out, and unfortunately, even though I had put the charger on it, the batteries were not charged. I made some error. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But I took, and he's got video of me. You can hear me making a call on that handheld radio, which didn't work. By the way.
Right.
But that was also where we noticed that the ELT wasn't working.
Right.
Because we weren't hearing it on the handheld.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, because, again, you were not that far from civilization, and I think a lot of people feel like, they've got their cell phone, they're going to have coverage, or certainly the ELT will go off. Even with a hard landing, you hear that those go off, right? Let alone, a landing in the trees like that. Neither of those work for you, right?
Not at all.
So, and now your handheld radio, it turns out, is in op as well. So what did you guys do next?
So yeah, I got out of the plane after just a few minutes and started to reconnoiter the area just to get a lay of the land and look at the plane to see whether or not it was secure, if it was going to tip over.
Well, and you also mentioned, hey, we should probably move away from this thing. We've got
Right.
all the gas pouring out of it.
Yeah, that not a bad idea.
Not a bad.
So I'm walking around. I'm also taking photographs of the plane from different angles. And you are?
Well, I'm first of all noticing that the ELT has not gone off. And I get to looking at the wreckage, and I notice that, well, obviously here's the ELT antenna pointing at the ground. And since I'm looking at the battery on my handheld, I'm thinking, we need to have some kind of communication. So I said, we need to get that ELT out of the airplane, both to activate it, so that I turned it on, but with the antenna in that position. I also know that those ELTs have a jack on them that you can plug a mic into and use as a communication device. Craig went over to stand on that log so he could get some altitude or elevation on that antenna. And I said, it's wet here. We could end up spending the night here. So you know what, I ought to get those seats out. And so I began taking the seats out of the airplane. And as I took the seats out, I thought, these things have sheepskin covers on them. My golly, if we have to spend the night, those might make good blankets.
Yes,
so I took my knife out and I cut the straps and took the sheepskin covers off. In fact, I tried it. I put one seat down and sat in it and kind of wrapped the sheepskin around me, and I went, ooh, that's nice, that'll be good.
And it's funny too, because we brought the second seat out. I brought the second, you gave it to me, and I brought it out, and because they'll collapse and fold up, you had to put them up against a big log. And I put them up against this log, and I put them about a foot apart, and Truman goes, no, we got to put those right next to each other.
Put those babies together.
We're going to need the warmth.
We want to stay warm. I know you want your space, pal, but we're going to need to stay warm.
We're going to pretend like we're back in a Cessna 150.
That's right.
We got a fly shoulder to shoulder. Do we have a sleep shoulder?
Sleep shoulder to shoulder. But so then once that happened, it was starting to get later. It was starting to not get dark, but the sun was starting to go down. And I thought, if we're going to be out here overnight, we should have a fire. We really need to have a fire. Of course, neither one of us smoke. Neither one of us had.
We didn't have any matches.
No.
Nothing.
We didn't have any flint and steel. We didn't have lighters. Nothing.
Right.
No way to start a fire. So I got to thinking, well, we have a battery that's right in the back seat that's easily accessible.
Which is now on the ceiling.
Yeah. So I went and pulled. I just ripped some wire out from under the instrument panel. Took my Swiss Army knife and stripped the wire and connected it to the battery. And we had a bunch of papers in the airplane, contracts and a few things, which it didn't burn, but took one of those and put a few drops of fuel on it and before we did that though, Craig had gone out and gathered up a bunch of firewood, some light
Twigs, anything
twigs.
that wasn't
Small,
soaking
medium,
wet.
Yeah.
Because it was very wet, very wet. And he made a little fire starter there, and we put some of the paper under there. Took that gas that was on the paper and took the two wires and lit just like that.
Yeah.
We got our fire going again for a little bit, but no, it didn't. The only thing we really got going was we got some good smoke.
Yeah.
Which we were informed later that search and rescue could see across the valley. So that worked out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of this MacGyver stuff here too that's fascinating. That unfortunately you had no injuries, so you were able to kind of manhandle some of the stuff. But the ELT and the antenna, getting the battery out, getting the fire started, getting the seats set up, all of those things, while there was still light too, right? So you could prepare for in case you had to spend the night.
Exactly.
My favorite part of the whole story was that they get out and they're making little videos and they're laughing the whole thing off. And then they take the seats out of the plane and they build the fire and spark the battery, and the smoke goes up and the rescue helicopter spots them. These guys who are 75 and 71 years old. And I think I called it, and in a stroke of septuagenarian badassery, fill in the blank, which it was. It was like the perfect punchline to the whole story. Of course they just, pulled them out and relaxed, waited. They were next to a clearing so the helicopter could pick them up. I mean, it worked out so well, and that is so rare.